I paid the down payment on my 2014 Nissan Altima 2.5S from an insurance check that I received after totaling the 10-year-old Infiniti my dad had given me while I was at college. So I was at the dealership, picking up my first brand new car a mere 3 or 4 weeks after having crawled out the back window of one that I had totaled. I felt grateful, immensely grateful. Grateful to be alive in the first place, grateful and somewhat guilty as well for the opportunity to turn a mistake into a positive that I knew many people never really have a chance to experience. But there I was at the dealership feeling high off gratitude as I signed the paperwork. And I was buying a brand new Nissan Altima. Driving home, I listened to music through my phone, which was connected to the Bluetooth, and I made fine adjustments on the position of the power driver's seat. Couldn't wait to get home and take pictures, share it on social media, and let the world see what I didn't deserve but had anyway. But that was where my head was at. My family and I even made jokes that all you have to do if you want to upgrade your car is drive it off the side of a freeway and sideswipe a tree. And it only took a couple of weeks to get completely and utterly used to the new car. Within 2 years, I was pretty much bored of it. The 4-cylinder engine wasn't as powerful as the 6-cylinder in the car that I had killed. The rearview mirror didn't have night and day sensors to automatically dim the reflectiveness of headlights in darkness. And sure, the turning radius was better, but this car is kind of wide and it's kind of long, so it's hard to park anyway. Yeah, the CVT transmission, it's smooth, but I kind of miss the recoil of an engine jumping gears. My doors didn't stay put. They don't stay put when you open them partially. Some of the plastic fixtures on the doors inside and on the dashboard make kind of audible but really annoying noises at highway speeds. When people would ask how I liked the car, my response was always, it's a car, it's fine. So look, why am I admitting all of this to you? It makes me sound ungrateful and it makes me sound entitled. It definitely does, I know that. But I'm admitting this to you because this is a very common situation. Not the exact situation, but this is common, this mentality. I know I'm not the only one who does it. And nearly everyone listening to this, you know that you do this too. You climb on the hedonic treadmill and every new privilege and new stimulus and new material thing becomes the new normal in no time. So whether you go from no car to a $2,000 1990 Honda Civic or from a 10-year-old Prius to a Maserati Gran Turismo, only those with outstanding command over their gratitude muscles can actually ward off the trap of the hedonic treadmill. And I was on that treadmill, and I didn't even notice it. My reality was created by my perception, and my perception was, this is a nice car, but it's really normal, and it's kind of boring. So what did I start to do? I started looking at upgrades. Pretty much as soon as I was, a couple months into my job, I was like, hey, shouldn't I be driving entry-level luxury? I work in the Silicon Valley in tech, and a lot of my colleagues drive BMWs and Teslas. And I could picture myself in a Benz. That would make me happy to drive. The car that I have now doesn't make me happy to drive, but a Benz, that would be powerful. It would have some pizzazz. So one day I was looking at used Mercedes-Benz listings online, and I thought of something. I thought of the day that I swerved the old car, the Infiniti, off a 15-foot drop because I looked at the car's stereo while exiting on a bridge and overcorrected to get back into the lane, and I lost control, and I watched the wheels roll over the edge of the road and thought of about 100 different things in the span of maybe 10 seconds. I thought of how I couldn't kick the door open because the car flipped over and the door actually bent into the ground. I thought about how I crawled out the back and checked myself and seemed completely uninjured. And right away, highway patrol from the other side of the freeway rolled up in disbelief and asked me if I was okay and asked me what happened. And I remembered, most of all, a phone call that I had with my dad that day. He had invented a game, which he still plays. As a psychology student, I really wanted to understand this game. At the end of every day, basically, this is how you play this game. At the end of every day, if you had a great day, you'd put a small blue dice in a jar. At the time, I was a college student, and I generally disliked going to huge lecture halls and studying for exams and feeling inadequate when it didn't go well, so I would typically put a dice in my jar maybe 2 nights a week. But I remembered a phone call that I had with my dad a couple hours after the accident. He told me that today was a great day. And for a moment, I was really puzzled I had had a generally stable, safe, and comfortable upbringing in a neighborhood so normal and middle class that the worst thing happening that happened to me growing up was probably the fact that not a lot happened to me growing up. So I was pretty puzzled because certainly totaling a car was one of the worst things I'd ever experienced. And after the adrenaline and shock wore off, it was becoming clear I'd be dealing with crippling lower back pain for at least a short while and maybe a while longer. And I still do deal with that to this day. But again, after that moment of confusion passed, I started to catch on. And my dad gave up the charade of the dice in the jar game. The trick was that any day you and your loved ones stayed alive and healthy, that would probably qualify as a great day. It really only takes one or two great elements in an otherwise mediocre day for that day to qualify as great. The day that I crashed my car, I defied so many horrible outcomes. Yeah, of course, the day itself was maybe the least fun day of my life, but it was also one of the best days of my life. I lost control of a car, swerved off a 15-foot drop into a strip of grass with a bunch of trees, and it was the back right window of the car with no passengers in the car that caught one of the trees, and that's how the car got the momentum to flip over. Yet I still crawled out right away through a window that was shattered when it hit the tree. And I realized pretty quickly then that had I driven off the side of the freeway 6 inches to the right, if it had been a second sooner that I started to swerve, it would have been the front of the car that hit the tree, and my face probably would have recoiled off the steering wheel before the airbags ever had a chance to deploy. Yet there I was, that day I'd collected my things and I drove home with the cops. And to this day, the biggest consequence is some irritating soft tissue damage in my lower back. The compression of the accident just kind of, now all it is that it's a little uncomfortable for me to sit or stand in one position for a long time. And if I'm not careful to lift with my legs, I can throw my back out pretty easily. And point being though, I didn't spend any time in a hospital bed. I had no damage to my head or my vital organs. So it wasn't the worst day of my life, which is what I originally might have told you it was. It was actually one of the best days of my life, as I survived something that could have very easily taken my life or a huge, huge part of it. The dice in the jar game is a game of improving your perception. So somewhat recently then, I thought of that phone call again, and I thought of that day, and I thought of the game. And I went out to my boring Nissan Altima and I sat in the driver's seat for a couple minutes and just thought about how incredible the car is. I've never had to make a repair on it. It's never malfunctioned when I needed it to work. The alignment's pretty good. The driver's seat is incredibly comfortable. It's one of the most comfortable cars I've ever driven. It's a pretty good looking car. It's got more aggressive and sporty lines than previous year Altima models. It gets solid gas mileage, which really lines up nicely with my efforts to save and spend responsibly. Of course, importantly, it's got a great crash test safety rating. So if I'm ever involved in another accident, I have a great chance of the seatbelt, airbags, and crumple zones doing what they're supposed to do. The car is red, which is my favorite color. It's got a bunch of cabin space and trunk space, and that's great now that I play in a band and I need to move equipment around for gigs pretty regularly. I thought of how grateful I was to get this car in the first place and how grateful I would be to have any even remotely functional garbage car if I were coming from a scenario of having no car at all. So, what is the objective reality of my 2014 Nissan Altima 2.5S? That actually barely matters. Every individual's reality is a product of his or her perception of it. In fact, the only reality that matters might be an individual's perception. It's paradoxical, yet pretty easy to understand. If you're getting into fights with your significant other or sibling or friend or manager or parent or whoever, if you're getting into fights, are you thinking about what you perceive as the reality of the situation, or are you thinking about what they perceive as the reality of the situation? If you're in a group of people and you say something that offends someone or it offends everybody, it doesn't ultimately matter if you're being objectively offensive, if the words you said were objectively offensive, or you could say things like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. Doesn't matter. If you say something and someone perceives it as offensive, that's the reality. You were offensive. The only reality that matters is perception, and you control your own reality with perception. Recognize that in others and yourself, and you will be better off, objectively better off, because you have made it so.